Don DeBAR. How you doing with a Maha hat?
I'm good. Well, look, before I hear a remark about it, before you tell me what it means I feel about what the Palestinians and Zionists and all that crap, look at this hat.
You're going to try to avoid, right?
Watch. You got to look at me for
Okay, here we go.
Work, okay?
Make America healthy again,
ready?
too. Make Israel Palestine again. Wow.
You like them apples?
I like that apples a lot. That is great. Ladies and gentlemen, Don DeBAR is here. Don, you had the Maha hat on, so let's start the show. Let's start off your segment real quickly about talking about the hearing and these people getting confirmed, what it actually means. I gave you my theory that I think we're going backwards, right? We're digging in deeper. We're still getting played. We're not understanding that it's a two-party illusion. It's a one-party system, and one party is just simply there to look like they're the opposition, WWE wrestling style, and then progress the objective of the ruling class and their plans moving forward. That's what I see, and until we realize what that our solution exists outside of this these two parties. That's my suggestion. Why don't you give your thoughts on, because I was with you. For the record, Don DeBAR is the one who drove me up to New Hampshire to get RFK in trouble, right? I was with you when that tweet went viral, and I said, oh, no, I got a dirty look from Stephanie Pierucci, the communications director, when I asked about that question. But that opened up the can of shitworms. So we were there together when we got to ask RFK these things. And now he is confirmed to be the head of HHS, Health and Human Secretary, which much better than the last one, Xavier Becerra, who I actually caught in Chicago and cornered him on a question. But I like to do that to the HHS secretaries. Your thoughts on this confirmation hearings, Tulsi, RFK? What do you make of it?
Well, the first thing you have to keep in mind when you're looking at the government officials and the making of policy and who do we support and not support is the structure of the government itself. And so, first of all, I mean, you've put a lot of time in, and I think it was time well spent, critiquing what happened with the pandemic, or whatever term you want to refer to, what happened in the COVID and COVID aftermath, vaccines, and the full expression through our economy and our political culture and our lives of the mega pharmaceutical companies and all of that. It's a major thing that has to be dealt with. Also, the thing that Kennedy was emphasizing about health in general. I mean, it goes back to his uncle. I remember that stuff in the Kennedy administration. You know, these are all extremely valid points that have never been addressed before, and no one offering a critique of agency capture, in my memory, that ran for president or has been in the cabinet. That's on the one hand, you know, and so the operation of addressing those concerns are not vested in us electing a head of Health and Human Services or regulatory authority over, you know, drug companies or whatever. We elect a president and one, or say three, of 535 members of Congress. And to say we elect them is even really a stretch, because the process is so corrupt and so controlled by money, gerrymandered, and every other thing, that we don't even do that. So the question becomes, how do we engage, or if we engage at all, with the apparent government, with the electoral political thing? You know, how do we do it, and what do we seek to, obtain from it? And then there's the question of, okay, you have two presidential candidates, who are viable in reality. In other words, one of the two of them is going to end up being president unless they shoot them both, or one of them, and put somebody else in there before the next January 20th comes along. Looking at what we were looking at last year, you've got, if you vote for Trump, you're voting for the campaign that promised to stop the war in Ukraine, to put Kennedy and that agenda in charge of HHS. Forget whether he's going to actually do it or not, or whether he can actually do it or not, or if Trump or anybody else who pulls Trump strings intended for it to happen. This is what was presented. We're voting on what's presented, and knowing that what's presented is just the apparent, if that. Also, Tulsi Gabbard, for warts and all, the idea of someone who has done and said some of the things that she's done and said, sitting on top of DNI. These are things that are, if nothing else, even if they are, just a game, TV show, novelties. No one has even uttered these words going into those positions. Now, does it mean that there's been some kind of fundamental change, or does it mean, that this is like BS 2.0, or SOS, same old,
Same old, yeah.
We don't know that. That's going to be the output. We're going to find out what happened. If we get everything we want out of them, it doesn't mean really there's been a fundamental change. This is just what the system had to, spit back at us if that happens, because it realized how close to the precipice their whole machine was, and that they had to throw. What was FDR? Was FDR really, a radical democratic, et cetera, et cetera? No, there were 2 minutes from a communist revolution here, and in the rest of Europe that wasn't fascist, and that was the biggest nightmare that they had. And so they were willing to open their banks and go in and grab a few rolls of quarters and hand them out to us so that we could eat and not rebel. And if this turns out to be great stuff that we get from Tulsi Gabbard and RFK or whatever, it'll be great stuff that we get from them. But all it is the system's attempt or concession to hold its own position.
I think that's the best word, by the way. It's the concession, right? Yes. Okay, so let me piggyback on that too as well, because and Jamie, get ready for the game to put the banner up. I always challenge Jamie Cheese Slice on the 1s and 2s, our engineer for today, and our normal engineer. We love him. He also engineered the LOL this morning. Dan Kovalik and Danny Shaw were on with the professor Jeremy Kuzmarov and Gloria Guillo. So it was a really fun show. I got to catch a little bit of it. It was really fun watching. I love all the, like I said, I am so humbled to be able to be close to all these people, including yourself here. You're one of my my Goombas. I have a personal connection to you, so it makes things better. But to have these conversations and the ones we're having right now, I think are so important. And yeah, what does that say?
That's long-term understanding of Bobby Kennedy, because this is work he did right here in the Hudson Valley 25, 30 years ago.
Yeah, and there's been some great work over there. Let's stick on this whole for a second. Me and you have been subject, and we've always been, since before I really knew you, and I paid attention to your work and reading certain articles. I can remember an article you wrote about, and I don't mean to bring her into the situation, but so what? She's a target. She opened her mouth. She deserves it. Medea Benjamin talking about that we can't give up Afghanistan to the Taliban, and your opinions on that. What I'm trying to say is that we've always been individual thinkers, and I think we've had no problem calling out what some people would label as the shit libs, the establishment people, the ones who are there, the oh my gods, they pay attention to the culture wars, the same people who have the same mentality to get you removed, from rebel media and from all that situation, that kind of mindset. When I'm on WBAI, I worry about certain things to talk about because I don't want to go too far against the Democratic Party. We've had kind of, those pushbacks from those people. Then sometimes people would kind of label us, just like Manila, they would label you a Trump apologist because we would call balls and strikes. Do you think there is some threat right now that we pay so much attention to them that we do kind of look at this situation as the lesser of two evils? You're getting something from Trump, because I believe the system is supposed to put that out. They're supposed to make you question the lesser of two evils. They take turns being the bad guys. Right now, the Democrats have done their part. They make Donald Trump look like a legitimate option when I feel he's not. Do you think there's something to worry about as far as concentrating on the Democratic Party? In other words, there are people on the left out there that are still owning the Democrats, but not criticizing the administration in office now that's holding power. How do we square that circle and get that good balance right now? Because a lot of people have come to me, and we've talked about this. The Democrats, there's not one of them who are really talking about what's going on in Ukraine and Russia. And from the phone call we heard about today between Trump and Putin, the bromance for 90 minutes, there's progress moving towards that. What appeared to be the Democrats' war, even though I would argue that Donald Trump did what was necessary to set them up during his 4 years of administration, providing weapons to Kiev for that to take place. How do we kind of have that balance that's needed moving forward and not just be like an Alex Jones where it's the left and the Democrats are the deep state, the left and the Democrats are the deep state?
Oh, please. The whole lot of them. I mean, the deep state isn't, none of them actually are the deep state.
Yeah.
All of them are the face of the deep state. There is a deep state. The deep state means the actual state that exists, that's outside of your view, that's behind, the circus that you're looking at on television. And the circus has red and blue clowns. It has had them, for my whole lifetime. Again, first of all, we're talking about, electoral politics and the government or in any event, the officials that it produces. And these are the people who were shown as the, makers and implementers of policy. And formally, in terms of form, they are. In terms of actual policy, however, there are those who decide actual policy and move all of the machinery around to implement it, including placing this or that person into the official positions, as a part of that effort. So if I were going to discern between, say, the Trump show and the previous Democratic or Republican shows, I'd say there's one point that I think is very useful to us in terms of our trying to get past the circus and get to actual policy. And that is even the critics of Trump, and I'm using Trump the way they use it, but in any event of Trump, is that even if he does bad stuff, he does what he promises. He will promise to do the bad stuff. And so this thing is that he's going to enumerate the policies that he's going to implement, and then you can choose them or not. It's much murkier looking at the general retail politician in the United States. Bernie Sanders, I think, is a perfect negative image of this particular style of politician, where he will promise you everything you want, and within the limits of his Brooklyn syntax, he'll promise it, in a rather articulate fashion in the limits of that syntax. So, in other words, if you ask Bernie Sanders, 6 years ago about single payer, this is the highest priority, among those who seek to have their hands on government or are involved in government, because this is the highest need among the people. This, you know this better than I do. You worked towards that whole thing with those people. But when the closer he got to actually being able to accomplish it, the more obvious it was that he did not intend to do it, actually, that he was there to thwart that from happening. And that's not, that particular thing is not true with Trump. I think we saw pretty strong examples of, look, I don't know how well choreographed the dance is. Okay. If he goes and he sits down with the president of Russia or the president of China and says he wants to accomplish these different things, and then Congress imposes additional sanctions by, a 420 to 5 vote in the House and 100 to 0 vote in the Senate, and thwarts it, was that Trump, not delivering because he was thwarted, or is this a dance that they, go drink to after it's over? I don't know that. But going on the apparent, there are some things that he promised to do with this sort of record of doing what he's promised. And the first one that got me, that I think matters more than all of the rest combined, because it's an existential question, is whether we continue to have a war with Russia and to try to pursue it even more aggressively, which is what was being advocated by just about everyone else in the government, or do we stop it and try to establish peaceful relations with Russia and China? And for all of the bluster towards China, that's also part of his stated policy. If you're looking at a whole bundle of policies that include that, and the other bundle of policies that's available does not include backing off of World War III, then I think you can't look into the package of policies on this side that can put it to World War III. Can. I didn't say will.
All right. Let me push back real quick 1 second, because I do think that you have a point there that you have to understand. And I do. I kind of look at the whole landscape, right? So where I look at situations is, okay, we're going to see some areas of advancement as far as what we, the people, want, especially the peaceful people who don't want to justify a war. I mean, obviously, people.
Before you summarize, I just want to say I didn't finish my point. And can I do that first? Because this.
Okay, go ahead. All right, because I want to make this other point, because I want to stay where you're at right now as far as when you said if you're not looking at everything across that board, right, understanding which. Please continue, but I want to go after that part right there.
And I understand what the other things are. I mean, okay, I've had this hat since they came out, because this is no joke. Okay, this is no joke. The people are being exterminated there, and I know the role that he's apparently playing now in doing that, and I know who's funded him, and I know all of the things around this, and I don't choose this. You know, I mean, I don't choose the extermination and all of that. That all these other things will not happen if we have a war with Russia. And the people that were making policy up to this point were balls out, good, working their way to having a major conflict with Russia. And to me, the minute they start launching missiles back and forth, it's game over, and all the rest of this stuff is irrelevant. Racism, sexism, the shooting your children in the streets, all of those other horrors are gone if you are a radioactive wisp of steam, which is what the outcome, no matter what kind of bullshit they give you, will be of a war with Russia. I just wanted to emphasize that point.
Okay. Absolutely. And I get that. But the whole thing about it is I think that we're also forgetting Donald Trump's part that was played leading up to this actual war, right? I mean, we can't ignore the fact that he provided record-breaking contracts of weapons to the Kiev regime that were once used to, once again, the baton was handed off. He also ignored and let expire nuclear treaties as well. As a whole, right? As a whole, I can say, all right, you know, the Israel stuff, but the other stuff that's being ignored is the AI advancement, is the technocrats moving forward. Had any Republican, right, had any Democrat, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Elizabeth Warren, any Democrat, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, stood up there and was the president of the United States and was introducing Larry Ellison of Oracle, who wants to have AI manufactured vaccines that go into your body, look at your DNA, craft a vaccine specifically made from you. I mean, this is some Matrix shit we're talking about over here. The Sam Altman, the talking about Starlink and Stargate, your complete Fourth Amendment rights are gone, opening up the door. Even once again, the Biden administration, who told the FBI, you're not allowed to use that spyware you got from Israel. Go lock it up in a warehouse in New Jersey. Donald Trump gets in. Go ahead, use that. It's Pegasus. It has a different name. Forget about your Fourth Amendment rights under Donald Trump. They've been advanced as far as being destroyed, right? So I look at those areas as well. When we look at that, I make the argument, Don, that even though we hear the chatter, the phone call with Putin and stuff like that, number one, Donald Trump played a part. Number two, he's there to advance other agendas that wouldn't be advanced had a Democrat been in office. It's like the same thing we saw with Clinton coming after Reagan with NAFTA. It's like one hand, they just keep going like this, but they keep moving forward on us. So to cite that, to see that, right, you know, because here's the thing right now. I'm being called the black pill, Don. I'm being called I have Trump derangement syndrome now because I've attacked him. That's not true. I just view the mechanism. I view the machine as playing kabuki theaters and appearing to look differently, but they're actually working together for the same agenda and the same goal. One side can do what the other can't. Is that a fair argument?
I think you're missing the essential part of my argument.
No, I do. I do. I do. I understand your argument that it's all inconsequential. Listen, nuclear holocaust is the worst thing that could happen because everything else falls at the waistline. But once again, going to the kabuki theater, and let's be honest, I don't care who is the president right now. There's no way that Ukraine can hold on this long. They don't have enough people. They don't have enough bodies. They're being exterminated. This thing was going to come to an end one way or the other. I don't want to credit Donald Trump for it because he did provide a lot of the weaponry that allowed that war to start in the first place.
No, see, that's the thing. We were going to come to this point anyway, and the question is what is going to be done next? And there were two different visions of that. I mean, the present moment was characterized differently, but sufficient to recognize what they were talking about for people watching. That we were going to come to a point where stalemate, defeat, the current failure to push Russia out, whatever, would have to be addressed because of the insufficient response of the West to the Russian aggression that was being spoken all over the place. And so the choice is, what would happen? Harris said, and she came out of an administration that did, because remember, Biden was the vice president and the point person when they pulled the coup back in 2014, that they're going to double down on it. That was their point. If you're sitting in Moscow and you're watching each and every move that's made on the ground, you're listening to what they say and looking at the history of what they've done as context. And when they're telling you the doubling down, the first time you see 2 extra F-35s or whatever.
But Lindsey Graham was a part of that. The Republicans were part of that. And Donald Trump's running around with Lindsey Graham and having him on the stage. It's the same. It's the same party, Don.
You're missing the point.
All right.
They weren't going to make the phone call to have a conversation about how to deconflict. And so, look, I'm not saying that anybody was going to do it. One side said they were going to do it. The other side said they were going to follow it more aggressively. Yeah. Now, what do? Am I going to appoint one or the other in there and constrain them from acting in any other? I mean, what are our choices?
Yeah, I know.
Our choices are to go into a ballot box and check little boxes between one of these two schmeckles or some other people who haven't a chance in hell of being president, and telling other people how to approach it. I mean, what exactly are the choices? I looked at this as a primary look. Everybody's organized around every fucking thing else right now.
Yeah. Where
are the people organized around forcing Trump to keep the campaign promise about Russia? Who would support that? Your audience on BAI. If you were to advocate, look, we're going to all go down to Washington and have a vigil until Trump has a meeting with Putin and reaches a peace agreement. Who would be in favor of that? You'd be off the air down there. They're half the people that fund that place would stop funding it. What's his name? The union guy that runs it now. It's a fucking circus from corner to corner.
Yeah.
It's not just those two guys. It's the whole fake left, too. Okay? And it's the people that are making these criticisms now. This is not lesser evil. There's a policy here that's existential. And if that doesn't capture our attention at this moment, we're screwed.